All right, we are recording.
Well, gentlemen, I really do appreciate you all coming tonight. We've got a great guest, and I think you're really going to enjoy the show. I want to talk about a few announcements before I turn this over to Jimmy Simmons. First, the train show. The train show is set for September the 19th at 1 o'clock. I hope you all can attend. I think it's going to be great. It's as full as it's going to get. We have, I think it's 18 companies now, and looking forward to a really interesting time. The training for the vendors, and this is for vendors only really, is Sunday, September the 13th at 7 o'clock. And we'll go over, how it's going to operate and this kind of thing. Dylan can explain all of the details from that standpoint to everybody. And then we'll be ready to go on the 19th. If you're new to the show and you've not done so, please send Dylan by the chat function your name, your scale, and your email address, and we'll send out emails to you about the future events. We're starting, as I mentioned last time, a series called My Build, and it's going to be moderated by Chris, of course, and it starts on September the 2nd. And the next one is going to be October the 14th. Chris is having a show that's going to be based on this tomorrow night. And Chris, you might want to talk about your show a little bit.
Sure. It's basically going to be all my build for this show. You can find a link on if you go to Conowingo Models. On Facebook, there's a link in there that'll take you right to it. It'll be under the events section. But basically, the whole premise is you either bring a model that you're working on, like this thing, or something that you've built, or even some pictures. And basically, we're going to use those as a catalyst to spark some conversation.
And it starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time, right?
Yes, it does.
This is something that's new
Jim?
for us. Yeah.
Are you going to record the vendors show?
Yes, and it'll be on my Facebook page for 1 month after the show. So anybody that misses it that night or that afternoon will be able to come and see it, or pick up the emails. Dylan will be displaying the emails for all of the different vendors, so that whoever comes to the show, if they don't get a chance to talk to the vendor right then, at least they'll have the email to be able to contact them after the show.
Right, because I know for me, I work on Sunday afternoons, so I won't be able to be there.
Okay.
Yeah, my boss wants me to actually work. My boss likes to have me actually work and not do other things.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
So, the show is something new. I've never done a show before. The reason I'm doing it, it just seemed to me to be a logical extension of what we're doing here tonight, particularly for the smaller vendors. And that's the only people that we've invited. We haven't invited any of the big vendors, Bachmans, or anybody like that. We've invited the smaller vendors that you normally will not see in the magazines, or maybe never have heard of before. We had one person that joined us for the training last night from Scotland, and he talked about having trouble trying to find the American vendors because he is an American prototype modeler who lives in Scotland. And so that kind of a modeler, seems to me, this kind of an event is going to expose these companies to modelers that may never have heard of them before. And frankly, that's, in my mind, that's the beauty of it. That's what we can try to accomplish in a very easy way, hopefully for everybody, both the vendors and the potential customers. So that's the motivations behind it. That's why we're doing it. The My Build that Chris is doing for us, even the name came from Chris. We wanted to do a show where everybody that participated would be able to show what they're working on, show what they finished, talk about problems they're having with the build, whatever. but be able to show the pride that they have in being able to build a model themselves and what that entails, and how putting together something with your hands and your own creativity is really an important part of this hobby. And that's what this is all about to me. To me, that's been my focus from the articles that I write and the Zoom meetings that I try to put on and the people that I try to bring to you. So that, to me, that was the thrust of it. And I hope that this series, or this part of our series, the My Bills, is going to convey that for a lot of people. And we're hoping that it's as successful as I think it will be. So with that said, I want to turn this over to Jimmy Simmons, who is one of the heroes in the hobby from my standpoint, because of the product that he produced a long time ago when he started. The first time that I ever started building models to show brick, that I was able to really use wood and not some kind of a laminated material or a product that I wasn't really familiar with working with. He came along, and the products that he used, that he produced, really were fascinating in my opinion. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing from him and hearing about what his plans are for the future. So Jimmy, I can't thank you enough for being here tonight, and I'll turn it over to you, sir.
I don't know about turning it over to me, but you know, I'm glad to be here. You know, when I was a little kid, my dad was a major model railroader. You know, it wasn't about you know, a 4x8, you know, piece of plywood. It was a basement. He built a house with the basement in mind so that he could build his railroad. And he modeled the Boston and Maine, you know, Connecticut River Valley areas. And as a little kid, I used to build buildings. And I hated working with plastic. The brick buildings I was building, the plastic, they melt, you know how the plastic, it melts and it brings the, you know, the two pieces together and so forth. And I had the ability to see it on a very large scale from a young standpoint. So to me, you know, it was normal to have a large layout, you know, and being around that. My dad would research, and, you know, I'm not big into trains. I don't call myself a model railroader. I never will. I love the trains and so forth, but my dad, he would research and he would make sure all the numbers and the correct logos were on all his Boston and Maine engines. And what was really neat was, I'm sure most of us here know of Scott Mason, heard of him or watched his videos. But he used to come to my house as a kid and help my dad build his railroad, because they didn't in Massachusetts at the time, the big, you know, model railroad club, they didn't enjoy it. They weren't very well invited. People, we had cliques and things like that. And so my dad's like, I'm out. And, you know, he had a 30-foot wide by 90-foot long basement, which was nothing but ceiling to floor mountains and rivers and, you know, one level railroad. And I got to learn from the folks who, you know, in my mind, you know, I mean, other than say George Cellulose, really helped create the market we're in. And I didn't even know it at the time. And what was funny is, you know, I then grew, you know, as I was growing up, and I played in a band and I toured and I did all kinds of stuff. And ultimately, you know, I went to the corporate world, and in my late 30s, I kind of got back into modeling. And at that time, you know, internet was just coming up about and so forth. And I found Scott Mason on, you know, the Railroad Line forum, reading through that. And I said, hey, is this the same Scott Mason that used to come to my dad's house? And he emailed me back and he was like, yes, oh, this is so cool that we're reconnecting. And it got me really back into just building models, scratch building, just doing anything I could to enjoy the hobby. And when my corporate career ended abruptly, at that time I was on, some of you may know that I was on Scotty Mason's podcast for a while. I kind of replaced Dave Frary, who's another good friend. And I had this huge audience, and I'm like, I started businesses for the corporate world over and over again. Why don't I start a business for myself? And I bought a laser, a 3D printer, and went from there. And I did not want to produce the same, you know, everybody who buys a laser, they all put out shingles. They all put out some of the same exact products. I'm like, if I can't put out something that is better or different from another vendor that's out there, I'm not going to do it. So for the longest time, I started the company, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And when I worked with Epilogue Laser, who they're actually here in Colorado, that's where their home base is. They had some training and some other things that I went to that really opened my mind up to being different. And this is where, you know, the brick and the stone, I said, hey, you know what? You've got the plaster, you've got plastic, both things. I mean, plaster is better than plastic any day, right? We know that. But a lot of people are scared of it. It's heavy, it can break. You can easily, you know, just put too much water and washes on top of it and end up losing all of the custom engraving that had been on that. And wood, to me, was my favorite medium to work with. And so ultimately, through Epilogue, I found that I could put brick and stone on wood. And it took an awful long time to develop the products and to develop the settings. You know, a few years ago when I tried to sell the business, people didn't want it because it was too big. I mean, we made an awful lot of sales. And you had to own my lasers to actually produce the same product. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to put it on hiatus for a little bit. And now it's been amazing. You know, again, we're selling it through my wife's business, Larkspur Laser Art, which does a lot of custom laser work for people and businesses, a lot of memorial stuff. You know, we lost our son in 2003 when he was 4, and it's something that you can't find out there. Products that you can buy. No one needs a sympathy card on a Christmas or a birthday anniversary. And so Larkspur Laser Art was started because of that. And at that point, honestly, we just shipped to Singapore the other day. We sell all over the world. It's been amazing. And the people have been coming back to me constantly when I was shut down, you know, just encouraging me and talking to me, and the relationship stayed. And when we opened it back up, I can't tell you the love I felt and just the support that was out there. And so it really, really made us want to put the product back out. But you know what? There was plenty of products that we put out that I hated producing. I didn't care for it. I have the opportunity now to pick and choose, create some new products that I'm looking at down the road here, and looking at it in a different light, right? From a model builder side of things, right? I mean, what I've always said is the trains make my models look better. You know, it's kind of a great marriage. And so, you know, ultimately it's just been a journey that I'm glad I'm back into here now. And, you know, the lasers, it was a matter of just turning them back on, turning the 3D printers back on, and a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Of course, there was things you had to remember. You know, it's a difficult product that we produce. As I was telling William earlier, everything is, I mean, I can draw lines, mortar lines, and just sort of use the lasers to quickly engrave, but it's not the same thing. We use photographs of actual brick, stone, cracked concrete, cobblestone, whatever it may be, split log siding. Everything I do is from an actual photograph of an actual real life material. And because I was a graphic designer years ago, I was able to incorporate that into what I do so that the lasers, which are basically big printers, are able to put out the detail that we do. And no one that I've seen has been able to do it. And I understand why, because it really took a long time to do. And you know what? When I was just a modeler, I was a tool collector. I collected every paint under the sun, every type of material you could use, weathering powders and you name it. And after I became a manufacturer, I found that I really only needed a few items to produce what I produce. And so it's changed for me as a modeler to, how do I teach somebody to paint the brick to look how I paint it when I promote it, things like that. So if I've had probably 20, 30 products that I never ever released because I couldn't find a simple way for someone to paint it and have it turn out well. Most of us are not the top 10% modelers that are, the Dave Ravellas and so forth of the world that can really produce amazing museum quality models. So, if someone who is just starting can't build some of my products and paint some of those products with success, I wasn't going to put them out because I wanted to cater to the person who is just getting started. Yeah, I love building George Cellulose's kits, but it's a box of sticks, and we all know that those super kits, you've got to cut everything and make everything. I didn't want that. I wanted to ensure that, when I have bracing for the inside of my kits, they're all pre-cut to size. You don't have to cut them, but I still want people to have to use their skill to build and to glue things together, so I didn't want to make it too easy, but you have to cater to those folks. And I think that's where our success came from, was the fact that we would go to trade shows and do builds, 3-4 hour long clinics where people would build, and we'd have first time modelers in there, and they're building and having success. And that is where I judge. In fact, the funny thing is that my wife, who is a big part of this business and really part of the success, she proofread all of my manuals. She's not a model builder. I mean, she's never built anything in her life, but if she could understand the instructions I was writing, I knew that folks who have never built a model before would be able to understand that. And those are, things that I don't think a lot of manufacturers, at least in the past, would think about. And so that is, sort of where we're at. Like I said, it's the brick, whether it be a small brick jail. We laser engrave all of the text and signs so you can stencil it on and so forth. That's just the passion, and I'm really excited to be back in doing what we're doing. So if anyone has questions or things like that.
Hey, Jimmy, I had bought a previous Monster Model Works 4-story building that I believe the previous owner had built, and he had it at the show. And even with the fire escape on there, it's an awesome building. I would like to be able to see if I could just get the brick material itself to add on. Yes.
We just re-released this kit. This is actually the Nate Starkman paint building in LA, which was modeled on a railroad out there. And McCampbell, that's my wife's maiden name. So I turned it into that. But yes, we sell, that's the biggest key. The biggest key for us was I started with the scratch building materials, right? The brick sheets, the corners, things like that. And then that turned into the kits. So if you can build a kit, you can scratch build anything we do simply because it's all the same process that goes behind it. And so that's why we started selling our main brick sheets, like in that building, the second story and third story is, it looks like this. This is where we're cutting them now. But there are we also use, and so these are the 1/8 sheets, which use the corners. We also sell the 1/32 sheets, which you can then layer. And so we do some cornices that have 4 and 5 layers of brick that you build over that. And with the McCampbell's building, there's multiple layers of brick to show those pilasters or the different cornices that are there. So, technically, if that was the whole goal, is that if you can understand how to build one of our kits, you can build anything you want by buying our sheets. And I watch folks, online and on different Facebook groups, and I see what they're doing with my stuff, and I'm just like, man, it's inspiring watching, these guys like Carlos Olinsky on the Fine Scale Miniatures Facebook group. I mean, he does stuff with my brick sheets that I would never even have considered. And so it's things like that that really keep us going.
Jimmy, I once heard you discuss on a podcast about how you were doing stuff that the company that makes your laser cutter didn't think was possible. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So as we grew, so Epilogue is it's a great laser company. There have been amazing support for me over the years. They're US made, which is important to me. And I bought one of their upgraded lasers. So I needed another laser because we had to increase production. And so I said, hey, well, I'm going to buy the next latest and greatest product. And that next latest and greatest product could not do what our original laser was doing. And I would contact them about that and said, hey, I can't engrave this. I can't do this with this laser. And your product materials say I can, but it's not happening. And they actually took files from me. They worked with me online on the phones. I sent them information, and they're like, you know what? You're the only one in the world doing with our lasers what you're doing. And we did not know that our upgraded laser can't do that until you came to us with that. And they ultimately said, guess what? We're not going to fix it for one person. So they actually gave me all of my money back. This is after a year of using it, trying to figure things out with it. And they said that, you know what? We're going to give you all your money back. I'm going to give you a discount to buy another one of the first type of laser. I have a Zing. The Zing is, different models they have, right? And they ended up taking care of me on that. And you couldn't ask for anything more, but I found out at that point that, like I said, using their lasers with the 3D engraving and all the stuff that we were doing, that no one else that ever bought a laser from them is doing what we're doing with them. And so it was unique. And so now I've got a couple of great lasers that are just, they are workhorses, right? They just go and go and go and go. And I've replaced the tubes in them. Eventually the laser tubes run out of, you know, the CO2 gas that it needs, and you have to replace that as part of the maintenance. It's really not that expensive. And so ultimately, yeah, they learned a lot from me, but they weren't going to change. They weren't going to fix it for one guy, which would have been nice, but I'm happy with the machines I have. Like I said, you know, each machine that I have to have different settings to get produce the same product from each laser. And, you know, I was telling Epilogue, I'm like, why? I just bought a laser from you. Why do I have to have different settings? And every laser tube is different. Regardless that they say it's a 40-watt laser, it's brand new, here you go, you are always going to have different settings. So I then had to recreate, and find the time to say, okay, how do I get this one laser to produce what my original laser was doing, the same quality? And again, that was another reason in selling the business was so hard, because one, most lasers don't have a 3D engraving capabilities, and two, I can't just send you my settings and say, here you go. That would never work. So it's a constant battle of which laser am I using for this product, which laser I like for this product, and we keep them going. But yeah, that was really interesting to Epilogue, that they spent a lot of time with me. Like I said, amazing company, the support, I couldn't ask for more.
So I don't know what the reduction curve is on lasers, but do you find that during the lifespan, that's the usable lifespan, you have to adjust settings as you lose, you know, as you begin to lose power? I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of a curve that goes like this and then drops rapidly at some point. And that's the point where you got to replace the tube after X amount of use. But I assume it goes down. Do you have to adjust for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always looking at the product as it comes off the laser, because you just never know when you're going to have to start. There's a balance between speed and power, right? And with the 3D engraving, it actually adjusts the power on the fly as it sees what it needs to engrave to get that 3D sort of look on a 2D material. And so I'm always watching what's coming off the laser. Oh, looks like I got to turn the power up now because the tube is starting to run out. You know, but you get about 4 or 5 years out of a tube. And I would say after about 3 years, you're really looking to adjust. You know, we cut a lot of intricate parts, you know, from, you know, the fire escapes and things like that have a lot of real small cuts in them. And yeah, I mean, you can easily have the laser not cut as well as it used to, or it takes longer to cut than it used to. And so, you know, it's something you have to always watch. And that's with any laser, you know, any company that's producing kits. I can throw on clapboard siding. I stock it here. You know, that most, you know, like, you know, say Doug and Jimmy, well, I guess Jimmy's no longer in. He's kind of got out of the business. But, you know, I could throw those pieces on and cut that material in just a couple of minutes. And it's easy. You draw, you know, the shapes of the building, and you cut the windows out in size, and boom, you can produce, you know, 100 kits in an afternoon. But with what we do, we've got to engrave everything first before we cut it. And so it's a much different process than just, you know, throwing pre-made material on the laser and cutting them. And and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking like Doug and those guys, because they, you know, Foscale Models produces some amazing kits. He's so talented. But that's what's great about our industry, right? We have all these different creative minds that are trying to help everyone else out there, you know, produce in a layout that they are going to be happy with, right? I mean, I'm working with a fellow in Las Vegas right now who has hired me to actually help, you know, build a custom layout for him. I'm custom designing buildings, and I'm going to build them, paint them, and weather them, and bring them there and install them. We're going to put road work in, He's asking me advice. He wants a museum quality layout that he's actually doing all in a shadow box. And it's a whole bedroom. I think it's a 10 by 10, 3 feet wide shadow box. And we're gonna do a lot of custom buildings. And so that kind of stuff is what's really exciting me now versus, it got to a point where I was putting buildings out that I didn't want to build. I had no excitement of creating this one brick structure. But I knew it would sell. It would sell across platforms. It would sell across countries. And it could go from whether you're doing, steam engines to diesel or transition dates. It would work in any of those. But it wasn't fun to build. It wasn't exciting. And it just got to a point where it was more of putting out stuff that I knew would sell so I could, earn an income. And it just got old. It really did. And now that, both me and my wife have really good jobs and I don't have to do this, this is what made it fun to come back, because I get to do all this extra stuff now. And it's not about, I've got to pay my rent, my mortgage next month. What kit am I going to put out? Now I have folks calling me going, hey, you going to put that Fellows Garage kit back out? Fellows Garage was actually a very historic old building in Pennsylvania. And I actually, after I put it out, I had the old mayor of the town, fire chief, and police chief of the town contact me and they just wanted to buy the kit. They didn't want to build it. They just thought it was amazing that someone took that landmark building in their town and produced it as a kit that, we sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of that kit. And to get that kind of response, that's everything. It really is. You just it doesn't get better than that when you're manufacturing. It's one thing to, just be a model and so forth, which I get. But when you're a manufacturer, it's different. And to get that kind of response it was just amazing.
Jimmy, those kits that you're custom building for this gentleman, would there be any interest in putting any of those out, or would that be opening the business back up again?
Oh, no. We always look, anytime I would put a new kit out, I would look to see, are there other products, scratch building materials and products that I could sell? So when we did Fellows Garage, it had a pan type awning. So we ended up putting out awning kits separate because of that building. The Fellows Garage kit also had terracotta coping. And I had to create that for the kit. And I said, guess what? Guess I can sell as a product. And so there's a lot of really neat brick buildings that we're going to be building that certainly could come out. It's not about not opening the business back up. I want to do it on my terms this time. And so we're slowly adding more and more products to the website. The website is a work in progress. It's not like the old website where, I paid a lot of money for it and I had a lot of control over how I could develop it. I'm just trying to do things, if I don't have to spend $100 a month on a website, I'm not going to. And so that's been a process for me to figure out and build. We're adding products all the time. In fact, we just added the terracotta coping and brick coping. And brick coping certainly came because of a couple other kits that we did that I needed coping for. And so it's not about not opening up the business. I just don't want to make it a full-time job again. So ultimately, as I get back started and to get things going, yes, I'm going to create new products. I'm going to create new kits because, selling the old same kits is great. It's easy. I've got them on the computer and I got the laser settings set up and Dave's sleeping. And so, that part's been easy. And actually, I've had people complain to me that I keep selling out of products. And that's because we're trying to do it differently this time. We're trying to have it mostly in stock, or, close enough that we can get it shipped very quickly to clients. And, if I turned on the whole website with over 600 products, we'd be back full time tomorrow easily. And I just don't want to do that. But I have the urge now. I'm in digital marketing for the business that I'm in now. And, forget about before COVID, right? The internet was growing and changing immensely. Like, I'm one of the vendors on Jim's show, next month for his trade show, right? Because people aren't getting together in large groups anymore. So they're doing it online. The innovation's been great. And Facebook, now with Facebook Live, I'm planning on, people always said to me, I did a lot of clinics and so forth, and they'd always say, hey, you're going to put a video out? Back then everyone was selling CD-ROMs of how to build this, how to do this, how to weather that. And I almost got into doing some of that. And so now what I'm planning on is a couple of Facebook Lives, which will stay on whether you're there live or not, it doesn't matter. The video will stay on my Facebook page. And I'm going to teach you how to build, how to paint, how to weather our products so that you can have even more success and you can watch it over and over again. And so I'm really excited about how things have changed. There's a lot of Zoom stuff. I mean, obviously, we're here on Zoom right now, right? Where we never would have been, 6 months ago, we probably wouldn't be doing this, right? And so it's going to open it up to a lot of new modelers. It's going to open it up just a different way of living and doing business. And so I'm really looking forward to a lot of Facebook Lives because, my instructions are one thing, right? I mean, like I said, I thank my wife for my instructions because she's the one who proofreads everything, and she'd be like, this doesn't make sense to me. And if it doesn't make sense to her, I got to change it, right? But to be able to do things live, because I can't tell you how to do everything in the instructions. But to be able to do it on a video where everyone can have access to it. I have people now, they keep emailing me going, hey, you used to have all your clinics and all your how-tos on your website. Are you going to put those back up? Yes, I'm going to get them back up and downloadable. But if I can do stuff live and show you how to do it, and you can watch it over and over again, that's a game changer for a lot of people, right? Most modelers, they're not the Dave Ravellas of the world out there, and other folks. You guys all know who they are, and so I have to be able to teach people, how to be successful. And a lot of times people say, "Hey, do you do custom laser cutting for me?" Yes, I do. We just did a big 42, 42-inch long building complex for Mike Rose. And he has his podcast, Mike's Crew Call. And that used to be Scotty Mason's podcast. And so Mike does it now. And he had been bugging me for the longest time to say, hey, can we do this building? And a lot of times when someone asks me that question, they say, hey, will you custom cut a building for me? I can't just say yes, because, I have to look at that building as a kit. And if you can't, I can cut anything for you. I can cut it, walls, windows, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you don't have a plan on how to build it and how it's actually going to come out properly after you get it, I'm not going to sell you it. I'm not going to cut it for you because I'm just taking your money and you're not going to have success. And I will not do that. So with Mike sends me all these drawings that Scotty actually did. And I don't like Scotty's drawings. He's not very good at, using the CAD programs to draw the buildings and walls and so forth. But I had to have a long conversation with him and say, how are you going to build this? How is this going to connect? How is that going to connect? How are you? And he's like, I just figured you'd give me the walls and I'd figure it out. No, it doesn't work that way. So we actually had to think about it as a kit. Now, you know what? I have all of George Cellulose's non-kits drawings that he has on his layout, right? They were put out by I forget his last name. His name is Jim. He works for Bar Mills. And he put out all these drawings of all the scratch built buildings that George has on his layout. And so I have all that. And I have people from time to time say, hey, will you cut this building from George for me? Because I want the brick walls and I want this and that. And if it's 4 walls and it needs some corners and it's just some window openings and you've already got the castings for the windows, that's easy. That's not a big deal to do. And in fact, we don't even charge a heck of a lot of money to do that because it's simple. But, I have people who send me these huge stations with all this different work. And I'm like, you've got like 3 hipped roofs on that building. How are you going to do that? I haven't thought about that yet. Guess what? I'm not cutting you the walls because you're going to spend money with me that you're never going to be able to recognize in the end. So I look at it from, I guess manufacturing kits. I guess one of my talents I found that I had, because I'm not an engineer by any standards. I don't have any schooling in that. But I can visualize in 3D a building. What's needed on the inside, what's needed on the outside, how it has to go together. And drawing it on the computer, laser cutting it, and putting it together, that's the easy part. But visualizing how these buildings go together and how someone is going to actually have success in building at is the hardest part of the job. And so I take a lot of pride in making sure that if someone's going to get a kit from me, that they can actually build it. Someone's going to get a custom work from me. There's a plan behind it so that they can have success. And that's the ultimate goal, because in the end, if you pay me a couple $100 and we make this big building and I send it to you and you get nothing out of it, that you can't build it, there's no plan, well, then I'm the bad guy. I just took money from you and you're going to have no success. So it makes me, for me, it's the success of the individual modeler with what they're getting from us that matters the most. And making sure that the detail is there, whether you're a first-time modeler or you've been doing it for decades, that you're going to have, we do a wood siding that has, what I used to put, everyone keeps asking me, you're going to put the monster nailer back out? The little nail holes, that was one of our first products that I created. And it was the worst product to manufacture. I hated it. It took a long time. It wasn't easy. And as soon as I could drop that, I dropped it. But people still ask me today, you're going to do that? If I can 3D print the base of it and have an easier way to maybe insert special needles and things that we use, maybe. But no. And then there's always that argument, right? You don't see nail holes. Yes, there are nail holes. And people put pictures up of nail holes, and there's no nail holes. And, we took some wood, some board by board siding photos that had nail holes and had all of the I used to give clinics on how to weather wood and how to make all the wood grain and nail holes and knot holes and the whole 9 yards. Now I just laser engrave it. Because from a real photo of real wood that has all the knots, all the wood and nail holes and so forth in it. And so it just changes over time. But one of my favorite products is the split log siding that we have. I mean, It really, I just recently had a customer send me his blog where he wasn't buying, we would sell blank kits where you can just cut your own windows and doors out and, you know, it all goes together. He was buying the sheets of it and showing step by step how he cut it all out and made it and what the prototype was. And I was just blown away, amazed. And then he's like, hey, you're gonna put this material back out for sale because I could use some more. I'm like, absolutely, we're going to. You know, so that's the fun of it. I think it's the feedback that I get from the modelers out there is what really makes a difference. And it's why I came back. You know, when I shut down Monster Model Works, the business actually was shut down. And I wasn't going to start it back up again unless we do it officially, you know, taxes, the whole 9 yards, right? I mean, it's easy to just take some cash from somebody and run the laser. And so when my wife had the laser business, the LLC set up, I was still getting emails and phone calls from past customers. And so it was very easy to turn around and say, hey,
I had to turn the light on.
let's put this stuff back online.
I went
Let's
dark.
get it going. I know Dave keeps falling asleep. I see you, Dave. I see you sleeping. So that made it easier for us to sort of flip the switch and just do it on my terms this time versus the terms of life where it was our business. I mean, we bought homes. You know, this business paid for everything for us for years and years. And now that I don't need that, I can have fun with it and put stuff back out. And that's where we're at today is now it's still not a hobby, right? It's a business still. You have to treat it as a business, but I can do it in my own terms. And I'm really looking forward to creating some new stuff and getting rid of the stuff that I hated producing. I didn't care about. It was really, it was more labor to do those certain products and not put those back out and create new ones. So that's where we're at. A lot of fun.
So Jim, it's kind of interesting. I sent some questions for Wednesday's call or Wednesday's session with Kevin. And one of the questions I said was, you know, what's the difference between a hobby business, and I'm going to put this in quotes, hobby business and real business. And I think you really defined that. You know, when you don't need the income and you do it because you enjoy it, and it's how, I think your point was a really good point. It's like how you like to engage with a hobby.
It did change.
Is creating things that do that. And it's different than if you're really looking to be a volume manufacturer.
You know, I'm not scared of doing volume. It's more, I just doing it on my own terms really makes a difference. And you can never, I don't care who you are. It's either a hobby or it's a business. And that's why I couldn't sell the business, because I had about 30 different businesses who are currently in the business contact me. I, you know, made them sign a non-disclosure, you know, paperwork, and I gave them all our numbers. And they were just like, whoa, this is way too big for me to even consider taking on. Because, you know, in my corporate life, I started businesses, online businesses for, you know, a publicly traded organization from ground up, and then would turn it over and start it and build another one. And so I understand the business world, but there's no such thing as a hobby business. You'll never be successful. You'll never put out a quality product because it's a hobby. You know, it's, I get it that I'm not out there. You know, one of my favorite buildings here was a scratch build. You know, I mean, I've spent hours on this. I have water and grass growing up inside of this building. And I did a whole clinic on it. And I love doing that. But when you have a business, you can't, not that you can't do those type of things. You have to focus on the business and the customer.
I think that's what I meant was the focus. It's not so much, it's the focus, is the focus on the hobby or the focus on the business. So the business is part of your hobby, or does the hobby become part of your business? And eventually, if the hobby becomes part of your business, it becomes less and less and less. And it becomes more and more of a business. I think that was kind of the point. You kind of lived through that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I made that decision that when, when my corporate, it was a Canadian corporation, and in 2009, they didn't care for the political climate. A lot of corporations had issues, and they said, see ya, and they pulled everything back to Canada. And I was a guy who was with them for 15 years. I don't have a college education. No one was going to hire me as director of sales or director of operations for a large corporation at the time. And so I made the decision to create the business and lose the hobby. I mean, that was it was an easy black and white decision. Boom, it's got to be a business if I'm going to have a successful life. If, I'm going to be able to help my kids, go to school and grow up and have my wife, us to have a life. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like, I still don't have a hobby. I picked playing music back up again, which I hadn't done for a long time. So I guess that is what my hobby is writing music and playing music, maybe putting a band together. But I still treat this as a business because you as the customer deserve more than you just someone who is, going to throw something out there to make a couple of bucks. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Timmy, I got another question. Are any of those hats for sale?
I never sold them. I only had a couple made for ourselves. I got a jacket and a few shirts, but I never sold them. It wouldn't be hard to do that. I network a lot here in town. I belong to B&I groups, business networking groups, chamber groups. So I know every business owner under the sun here in the Springs. I mean, we just have relationships. So it'd be pretty easy for me to have these made and sell them, but I never got that. I would give a few away to a couple of friends, but I don't know. I don't know why I guess personally, I wouldn't buy a hat from another manufacturer when I was a hobbyist. And so putting them out for sale, I think for me was, it just didn't make sense. I just used them for my own, promotion and so forth. So probably not. Although what's cool now with my wife's business is I have a rotary engraver. So I can engrave flashlights, cups, mugs, tumblers, anything that's cylindrical. I can actually engrave on. So one of the things I had put out was I sent it to my dad. I put the Boston and Maine logo engraved on a nice a cup with a leather wrap and sent it to him. And I said, at some point, I will sell, and had a few other model train groups that were like, hey, we've got our own logo. We could use those mugs and cups and things like that. Will you do those for us? And yes, that's, part of what the fun we're going to have is it's not just throwing a piece of wood on the laser and engraving brick and stone. Can almost do anything. I mean, Jake Johnson just contacted me the other day. He's like, can you make me a jig? I got to cut certain kind of plastic tubes and this and that. And yes, we can help you with those things. So it's
interesting
it's
thought.
Gonna be fun. That's what the whole thing's about.
An interesting thought. You've got a cylindrical laser system. Might be interesting to think about making some tanks with that. Take like a 2-inch dowel and carve on it the textures of a tank. It may be a really interesting way to create some interesting cylindrical models.
never thought of that, but absolutely that can happen now. Or
That's a
people
pretty
used to
cool
ask
concept.
me, yeah, people used to ask, they'd be like, can you do a cylindrical chimney stack out of brick?
Right.
And in the past, the answer was no, we can't. But now, technically, I can take almost any diameter wood or acrylic or whatever kind of material and put it completely all the way around that item and create chimney stacks, or like you were saying, tanks and things like that. So that's certainly, you just gave me an idea.
So I had another kind of thought process. Would it make sense to do reservations? So it seems like if you have, like you said, you don't want to turn on 800 products, take a long time to build that. But if you said, look, it basically say, if I get 10 orders for this one, I'll do a run of it because there's enough volume to create kind of the start time, and then you run 10 and then run another 10 for backup inventory. So kind of your inventory gets driven. So, put some sort of online reservation. You say, here are the next 30 products that I'm trying to pick between. If I get 10 orders for this one's going to go in the queue, and because you can kind of do almost an online queuing system, like vote for your products by pre-ordering for when they go into production. Anyway, interesting thought process.
You
Make
know,
a lot of people mad who didn't win their vote.
But you just should have bought more. No. The point is to say, look, if I get 10 orders for this sheet, I'm going to run it. If I get 6 orders for this, because it's kind of what's the volume that makes sense to fire up everything to do it. So it's kind of like you go through your inventory and say, well, if I got 10 orders for that, it makes sense to run that. But this thing, I got to get 12 for that one. And you kind of prioritize, and that way, kind of people define what's most important in the inventory to get to first. And then, I don't know, it's an interesting thought. Sometimes the public vote's the best way to do it.
Phil, you're 100% correct. And one thing I do not want to do is I do not want to take people's money before I produce a product. But I get emails, and our online website now has a chat feature and a way to contact us as well. And I get folks who are saying, hey, are you going to put this product back out? Let me know when you're going to put this product back out. And so I'm kind of doing that on the back side of it, because I'm getting emails of folks saying, hey, I would love to see this kit come out again, or I would like to see this product. And one of the things that I had to do, we recently released our coping, we recently released our cornice kits, and then our 1/32 thick sheets for folks who are doing pilasters and different overlays. Because if I just put out the corners and the brick sheets, you almost can't truly build a building out of that, right? So there are products that are a guarantee that, hey, what's going on? The biggest issue, though, Phil, that I have, it's different scales, right? I got N scalers who are emailing me constantly. You're going to put this up. N scalers really aren't model builders. Most of them aren't. They want.
Hey, wait.
No, most, I said. Most, right? A lot of them just want to run long trains. And so, I put out a few N scale kits, and I have N scale product. But in the scheme of things, when we had the full-time business, 70% of all our sales, Rachel, S scale was the next biggest, which I always cater to because it's very easy to take an HO kit and turn it into an S scale kit when it comes to the drawings online, the different thicknesses of material and so forth. But when you create an O scale kit or an N scale kit, doesn't matter if you have it in HO already, you are literally creating a brand new product because you cannot just downsize it, cut it, print it on the laser and have it ready. And the problem is that, I would say 10 to 12% of our business was a combination of O scale and N scale. And they were the biggest askers of product out there, but they always bought the least amount. And it's not that I'm not going to put N scale out or O scale out. I mean, I have the sheets and different products out for that now. But I'm going to be reserved on how much of those scales I put out, because it's the same processes that I have to go through to create the stuff that I'm selling the most of.
Do you
But
find
I'm
that
only
big
selling a very
demand?
small amount of it.
Excuse me. My name's Tim Gilman.
Hey, Tim.
I came in a little late. I was running into some technical problems, but do you find that there's a big demand on the N scale part? I have a friend that runs a hobby shop, and he's moving very little N scale merchandise. He said it just isn't moving.
Yeah, the N scale literally was probably 7% of my yearly revenue, and so there were a few kits that I put out in N. They did well. They were great kits. I really enjoyed doing them, but I haven't put any N scale out at the moment because I want to sort of redevelop it. I think that by me going with actual scale size of real brick, that I have Z scale modelers who use my N scale brick, and they were like, "Hey, can you do me Z scale brick?" And I sent them a sample of the Z scale that I could do, and like, "Whoa, that's awesome, but it's way too small. I'll take the N scale." And so I feel that my N scale product is too small, so I want to do some redesigning to it before I offer it back out to the public. We have a Freight House flat N scale kit that I absolutely love producing, and people are asking me for it now, and I know I'm going to re-put that out, but it's very little. And you know what? The O scalers, they're the biggest askers and not buyers of product, and so you have to. You just have to take it seriously on my end, right? How much time is it going to take?
Exactly.
I mean, I can charge you 3 times as much for something in N scale or O scale but why?
Yeah.
Right? I don't look at it that way. And so I want to make sure it's right. And I want to make sure that it's a product that's actually going to be used by that scale if I'm going to put it out.
The other question I had for you earlier was, do you do any networking with other builders such as Art Fahey or Doug Frostscale?
That's a great question. Art Fahey actually, I had to tell him, please take my monster nailer out of your instructions, because he used to tell people to come buy my nailer for his kits. Art at one point came to me about potentially buying my brick sheets and things for his own kits. But I would, and I have built and made for other manufacturers, and used to create products for other manufacturers. But most of them stick to their own stuff. I mean, Art's a great guy. Doug's a great guy. There's a lot of really good manufacturers, and since I haven't had, because I haven't been to the shows. When I used to go to the shows, and I used to help Scotty run the Craftsman Structure Kit show, back when it was that, before it turned into fine scale miniatures with Doug and Jimmy and those guys. We always would hang out and talk about things and products, but there's very little interaction between someone. There's not a lot of money to be made. And if you one of the things I did is I said, I'm not buying windows from Tichy. I'm not buying products. I'm going to laser cut them and make them myself. So all of my windows.
I noticed Bar Mills has been doing that.
Yeah, and they do that, but that's a cost that's involved. And way I said is if I'm going to make a prototype, I'm going to follow a prototype. All of my buildings have the actual windows that were in that prototype when I found the photos of them. So I'll draw them to the exact brick heights and the exact sizes, and I can get my mullions more closer to scale than, say, what Tichy is selling. And what I didn't want to do was to have everybody building my kits have the same windows that are in 10 other kits sold by 10 other manufacturers. So I looked at it more of doing it myself because I can control the cost, as well as control the creative side of it.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, I have with Mike Rose, he sent me all his windows and doors that he was using, whether they were Tichy or they were from someone else. And I had to make sure all my cuts, the windows would fit in those cuts, right? You know, when I control it and I draw the drawings, I know my window sizes, I know my material thickness, I know what I have to do to make those windows. And it's not just as easy as saying, oh, the Tichy opening for this window is this much, because the laser has a kerf on it where it's actually cutting away. If the laser's cutting down the center, you're actually losing, you know, about 5/1000ths of an inch on either side that you've got to adjust for. So if you're buying Tichy windows, or, you know, I've got to make sure that they fit in properly. And again, I wanted more of a custom thing. So I haven't had a lot of interaction with to your question about other manufacturers and networking with them. Most of us stick to ourselves, and we're friends. You know, there's no competitiveness. We all do something different and offer different things and have different talents. So
I know that Bar Mills has been talking with George Celios from time to time and wanting to build some of his previous models. They call and get permission for like O scale or N scale stuff like that. They've done a few over the past year, and they've had pretty good success at it, actually. And what they usually do is they'll send a kit down to George, so George can check it out, check it out and sell it or pass it.
I would never, you know, if an individual modeler says, hey, here's the drawings to one of George's scratch built kits on his layout, I can easily cut that for them. In fact, I'm doing a couple for a couple of guys here now. But I would never put those out as a product unless I personally spoke to George and said, hey, I get a lot of call for this. I want your permission. I mean, I think that's
what he did. That's what Art did. He did do that. Yeah, he did do that.
And Art's a great guy. I've hung out with Art for long times at shows, and other times we spoke on the phone. We're Facebook friends and all that. He's a great guy. Everybody is. Like I said, it's a community. I made joke. I forget the guy's name. His name is Jim as well. He just put out a product called the Monster Brick Roller, where he 3D prints a roll, and it's got brick or something on it, and you have to roll it over some, whether it be plaster or sculpt mold or some kind of putty to get the brick impression on it. And he called it Monster Brick Roller. And I said, Jim, you couldn't get any more unique than Monster Brick Roller.
Really?
is a Monster City Studios or something. He said, he's like, are you upset about that? I'm like, dude, no, I don't care. I've had customers email me like, dude, this guy's using the Monster name. I'm like, come on, man, this is too small of a community to get mad at people, and to not have a good relationship with people. And hey, if his product helps people and does things for people, awesome. It just helps the hobby in the end. But I love talking with other manufacturers and just ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, that's what I would really be interested in, sharing ideas and getting ideas from other people in the field, That's how you learn, and that's how you expand and become even more creative, because you can roll off of an idea of theirs and expound on it and really make it so that it would really benefit a lot of people, not just yourself, but a whole bunch of people.
Oh, Absolutely. I've had many an instance where a a customer called and said, hey, I have so-and-so's kit and I don't want to use the brick paper or, you know, whatever that manufacturer put out. Can you cut me walls to fit for this kit so I can have great brick and then I have the great other aspects to what that manufacturer was selling?
Yeah.
And I do that all day long. But there's not enough money in the hobby for folks to, you know, hey, I'll cut the walls for you for this, and I'll send them to you for that, and then how many kits you're going to produce, and it's a little bit more difficult when it comes to that, but
exactly,
you know,
Well,
working together, like I said, it's a small hobby.
The bigger problem you have is if they bought the brick sheet from you that you manufacture instead of the way they do it, it would increase the cost of their kit probably by 50 to 100%, depending on the kind of kit it is. And so one of the key things in the market is, you know, there's kind of this bipolar buying pattern where probably 80% of the people buy the kit the way it is, or 90%, and then 10% would prefer better brick. And if you build your kit for that 10%, you almost have to have your kit in two formats. You'd have to have kind of the regular kit and the whatever they call it, rivet counter kit. And so, you know, if you have to really think that through, because, you know, the problem is if I'm a manufacturer to come buy your brick sheets, which are really great, it prices my model up in that point where I'm probably beyond the elastic curve of the volume I need to get for my kit. So it's a really interesting, you're able to get kind of this pinnacle of picking brick quality, let's call it, of the people that are there. But when you extend that in the general market, it just doesn't apply. It's probably a good reason why those partnerships, your point about there's not enough money, but it also changes the market position of the product when you go to that kind of super detailed in a product. A mass market product doesn't work that way.
No, you're 100% correct.
Cool.
Yeah.
The other side of that is that if somebody leaves the market, then what are they going to do about, let's say, brick sheets, or the other way around? I'm not picking on you, sir, but I would hate to be a manufacturer that loses my vendor for exactly that.
Dependencies are challenging.
Yeah. What's his name? Anderson Scale Models. He was buying stone from me. I was cutting a lot of kits for him, and I was engraving a lot of stuff for him for his kits when he would sell them. And it got to a point where, you know, it's like I could produce this kit myself and make more money than what I'm giving you a discount for. And then actually I've had clients of his call me and say, hey, can I get some more of that stone material that was in this particular kit? Because I want to expand upon XYZ. And I'm like, yeah, I sell that stone. You know, so it really, you're right. It changes the price of people's models. And then, like I said, I try not to rely on anybody for anything. All of my couple of kits I did that had ribbed metal roofing, I was buying that through Motrack Models, Jeff Adam, who's a good friend. And that was the only product that I ever would purchase for my kits, because I couldn't laser engrave ribbed metal roofing that would actually not increase the price of the kit. I don't put out kits that have my wood siding anymore. I had one kit that I put it out with. It's gorgeous wood siding with all, like I said, the nail holes and all the wood, in it. Yeah. But when I put that kit out, I was charging a lot more money for it than what anyone else who's just using regular wood, pre-done stuff with a 3-minute laser cut job would. So to me, it wasn't worth for my client to buy that kit simply because it's got to engrave all that stuff and I got to charge for the engraving time.
Yeah.
So
JL Innovations does the metal roofing as well.
Who does?
I built one of their kits about 7 years ago, and they use the foil type roofing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, Jeff
recently,
gives me a good price on that stuff. He's a great guy. He's
yeah,
innovative. I think most of us know Jeff Adams over at Motrack Models on the line
yep,
here. And
yeah, very good
but right
products.
now I only have about maybe 2 or 3 kits worth of stock. So I haven't decided if I want to call Jeff and say, hey, send me some more of that stuff and I'm going to re-put out my pump house, or I'm going to put out this other kit that uses that roofing material. You know, the funniest thing is that most of my kits, if it's got a, you know, a lot of roofs out there, they're flat top roofs and they're hot mopped with tar on them. Well, I just teach you. I cut a piece of cardboard out and I teach you to use spray paint and sifted some sand on top of that, then spray paint it again to give that texture of that roof. When I do my own tar paper roofing, I'm not going to buy tar paper roofing from another manufacturer. It's crazy. I just take a sheet of paper that goes in my printer. I put a sticky material back on it. It's a transfer tape that I think we've all used. And then I spray paint it with a flat black. Then I have it all pre-cut. So it lays perfectly on your roof and looks like tar paper roofing, right? And it costs me almost nothing for it. And you get great detail in the kit that I don't have to charge a ton of extra money for because it's really easy to make. And so I know it's controlling, all of us manufacturers, I think, try to control our expenses, but I went way far and beyond. And the only thing I've ever purchased was from Jeff, was that metal roofing. Other than that, if I can't laser cut it or make it, it's not going to be part of my kit. And I have some amazing wood shingle roofing material that I use on my my saloon kits. This is a really great, Jake Johnson drew it up for me. It's an actual historic building, and I have it amazing. It's a wood shingle roofing material, and I get people all the time going, "Will you sell me that roofing material?" No. There's so many companies out there that sell wood shingle roofing material. Go buy it from them. It looks great. I make mine for my kids. And I actually had one guy at one time say, I referred him off to whether it was West, what's that company? West something models. They have a lot of different roofing materials and kits. And
West River?
Not West River. I forget the
East,
name.
West?
It's West something.
Okay.
And they had awesome shingle roofing. And I sent them to him. I said, go buy some. And a week later, I get a phone call. I bought some and I threw it in the trash can. Because I have your saloon kit and I want S scale. I need 200 square feet of roof for this one material and I want yours. I'm like, I don't sell it. And he's like, sorry, I want yours. And I'm like, man, it's going to cost you because this stuff takes a long time to cut. And he's like, I don't care the cost. And I think he spent $300 or $400 on just shingle. But I won't put it out as a product because you can get good stuff out there. You know, why take away from another manufacturer is the way I think about it, how I look at it. You know, let's support the hobby, and all of us are in it to help modelers, and we all have great products. I don't need to put out the same products you're putting out. And that's just, I guess that's just my opinion on that. But you know, it's funny sometimes what you get from people.
I think Phil might have just found it. Wild West Models.
Yeah, I actually used theirs. I built a church.
Wild West, absolutely.
I built a church and had a big roof and actually used theirs. And they turned out really very well. They're basically paper,
Yes.
but they're very nice. And yep. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of.
Yeah, no.
Exactly. You can always find
Wild West, absolutely. That's 100% who they are. I've like I said, we used to do shows together. And I try to recommend any manufacturer. You know, CC Crow is a good friend, Clint. You know, with all his you know, roundhouses and his plaster brick. You know, I mean, it's too small of a hobby to, you know, to just not get along with everybody.
So Jimmy, how did you get the name Monster Model Works? You probably told it 100 times, but I've never heard it.
You know, that's a good question. When I first started the business, I did not want to be pigeonholed into a model railroad business. You know, a lot of them, they're this railroad, this, or like Jimmy, who, you know, Dagan, you know, he's, you know, railroad, model railroad kits and things like that. And then I've always loved that term, you know, the devil is in the details.
Ah.
And, you know, and then I started saying, we used to have a tagline that was the monster is in the details. And to me, it enabled me, I do a lot of work for military modelers, fantasy modelers. I've worked for architectural firms and colleges who are teaching architectural model building. I was actually told at one point that I could be a professor and teach model building in a college. I thought that was pretty interesting. And so I just figured monster was big. The monster is in the details is what my tagline was. And when I first started, and it just stuck with me. It resonated to, I could sell into any market. And it was a unique name at the time, at least to me. And then of course I was drinking, afterwards I was drinking a lot of Monster energy drinks. And I still today, when I wear this hat, they're like, oh, you work for Monster energy drinks? I'm like, dude, can you see Model Works underneath it, right? It's not the same. And so then I would always do clinics and I'd have a can of Monster and then Monster Model Works. And people used to think, oh, you named the business because you drink Monster energy drinks. I'm like, no, I actually started that afterwards, but it's just funny. You know, it just kind of came along with it. But it was more wanting to not, you know, we did a lot of work for the San Diego Model Railroad Museum and things like that. And I just didn't want to be a model railroad business because I'm not a model railroader personally. And it just kind of connected and worked out, you know, so, and stuck. So, and everyone knows it.
It's memorable.
For the most part, Monster Model Works. There you go. And I took the Model Works from, what's his face? Oh man, he actually has all my dad's. When my dad moved to Vegas from Massachusetts, he sold most of his bench work. And my dad's bench work was amazing. It had all the labels on it. It had all the holes drilled for the wires, you name it. And what is it? Oh, it's killing me now because he's really not doing it anymore. He was one of the major kit manufacturers. Model Works. God, I can't believe I can't think of his name right now because I've been to his layout. He's using all my dad's bench work. Close friend with Scott Mason and so forth. What is his name?
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
He put a ton
Was
of
he
super
from
kits.
Conway, Mass?
Yes.
Yes, I can't think of his last name, but he was part of West River Model Works.
I get his.
That was the name of them. South River.
You know, I
West
have
River?
now you have me really on a hunt because I've always been tough with names, you know, just always had struggles remembering people's names. And
Wait till you get older.
It came with the red box. They were always like George had the yellow boxes. He had the red boxes.
South
Oh.
River Model Works.
Yeah,
Model Works, yes.
South River, yes.
What's his name? You remember his name?
The only thing I think of is Glenn. For some reason, the name
No, it's
Glenn
not Glenn.
comes into my head.
Because the funniest thing was,
They're out of Conway, Mass. I know that.
yeah, you know, the funniest thing is that I sold dirt for the longest time. And what was funny about selling dirt is I couldn't keep it in stock. It sold so much. And one day Scott Mason calls me up, and I was using it for my own models. This was before I had the business. And and Scott goes, dude, where are you getting that dirt? And that's the perfect color. And I said, well, I get it up the street. I live in Vegas. I get it up the street. And I bake it, you know, and so on and so forth. He's like, can you send me like a 10-pound box of it? And I did. So I'm trying to Google him right now because it will keep me awake tonight by not remembering his name. And he always used to say,
Scott Mason.
Scott Mason called me. He's like, yeah, he's like, where'd you get that colored dirt? I said, it's up the street from where I'm at. And he wanted some. And he always complained that, here it is. Here he is here. South River Model Works. And I loved his business name. So I used Model Works in with the Monster. Like I said, if I don't find his Bob Van Gelder.
Okay, there it is, Bob Van Gelder.
So Bob Van Gelder, Scott calls me and he says, where'd you get this dirt from? And I said, up the street. And he goes, because I keep asking Bob, because Bob has a supply of this dirt and he won't tell anybody where he gets it. And I'm like, what do you mean he won't tell anyone? He goes, I keep asking Bob where he gets his dirt and he won't tell me. And so I sent Scott a big 10-pound box of it at one point, and I started selling it. And it was called, it was diorama dirt, and it was the right color. That was the slogan on it, was the right color. And I tell you what, I have people to this day who says, hey, now that you're back in business, are you going to start selling dirt again? And I said, listen, it's in Vegas. I'm in Colorado. Unless I get down to see my dad, because I used to, travel from San Diego to Vegas, and we would bring home, 10 5-gallon buckets of it, and then sift it down, bake it, package it, and sell it. And so now that I got this customer who's having me do all this custom work, guess what? He's in Vegas. And he's like, dude, I will get you dirt. I will take care of it for you. If you're going to help me with this project. I'm like, listen, when I come down to Vegas, I'll probably pick up a bunch of 5-gallon buckets of dirt, because it is like when you build a model, I have a lot of people who actually do a lot of narrow gauge modeling in Colorado, and they come to Colorado and they actually collect dirt from the location that they're modeling. And it never looks like what they see in the photos. And our dirt was so light colored. What I always said to people, it's the perfect base because it's not going to be muddy looking, and everything else that you're adding to it, it's like when you color, say you start with a brown paper bag and you want to do a coloring on it. You're already starting with a dark, dingy, surface. So everything you do from there is going to be dark. And so this dirt, I would tell people where to get it. I would tell them how I sifted it. I would tell them what I did to produce it. And they'd go, okay, how much? Give me a couple packets of it. I don't want to do all that. And so I tell you, over the years, I probably sold 30 $30,000 of dirt that I collected. Picked it up for free on the side of the road, sifted it. My son would sift it for me. My wife Lisa would bake it in her oven with her pot, with her her ceramic dishes, and she would package it. And I just couldn't keep it in stock. It was crazy, but it was a beautiful color. So,
Well, you
probably gonna have
realize
to get some more.
you realize you can now visit your dad and write it off as a business trip if you pick up dirt.
That's true. That's
All
true.
expenses paid.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So
That's,
people keep
that's
asking me, and I say,
it's
listen,
got to
when I
be an
get to
interesting
Vegas,
conversation with the accountant, though. I mean, think about it. Yeah, no, I went to see my dad. Why is it not here? Well, I needed dirt, so it's got to be an interesting conversation at the very least.
The accountant's not the problem. The IRS is.
To be honest, we would go to visit my parents, and we knew we were coming home with dirt. And this was, after we had moved out of Vegas and back to San Diego, and never wrote any of that stuff off. Never thought about it. It was just we were going to visit the parents. I'm going to go grab some dirt. I mean, it was all profit basically with the dirt, so it really wasn't. At one point when I would sift it down, I get all these little stones, and I started sifting these stones down into what could have been used as ballast. They were beautiful, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to sell rocks and ballast. And all. And then so we had to find a place to dispose of all the leftovers, and we had a spot in the backyard that we would just keep filling in. It just needed a lot of fill, and we'd use that for that. And, but yeah, the good times. But dirt.
Jimmy, I got a
People know me
question.
for dirt. I'm just like, dude. And then I had people like, dude, I got to finish my layout, and I don't have enough of your dirt left. And I gave them an actual location in Vegas on the map where they could drive. And they're like, you know what? I go to Vegas about twice a year. I am now going to come home with some dirt. And I said, you got to make sure that you sift it, and you got to make sure you bake it, get all the moisture out of it, kill all the, whether there's plant material or bugs, whatever. But it was baking it that dried it out so much that made it as light as it was. And without doing that, you would never have the product. And so they're like, perfect. And I got guys who are actually going to Vegas to go get dirt for their layouts because they were using mine. And it's just, like I said, that's the amazing journey that we've had over the years, is when you can talk about dirt and people want your dirt. That's just crazy, amazing. So.
Jimmy, I got a question for you that I ask everybody. When you're building a model, when do you know it's finished? When do you put it away and say it's time to start on a new project?
Well, when I was just a hobbyist, I would put hundreds of hours into models. There was almost no end. But when you become a manufacturer, it's time to put it up for sale. It's done. It simply was that. I would build it to my best ability, looking at prototype photos. And when you're laser cutting parts and building it and painting and weathering and so forth, you had to get that done. There were times where I literally could start a project for a new kit, and by the end of the week, have a prototype built up, photos taken, and it ready for sale, all the laser files ready to go. It was like, and that wasn't even a full week putting time in because you're doing other things. So it was probably, maybe I could finish a kit in say 24 hours over a week's period of time. And so for me, it was, this is ready for sale. I need to make some money. This is my business. This is my job. All right. It's like any of us who have jobs. Whether you're selling something or you're servicing something, you had a budget to make. And so ultimately, for me, if I got it as close as possible to the prototype, if I was happy with it, and it was easy to build and paint, the hardest part is I put them up for sale, and I'm like, now I got to write a manual. That was the worst. Writing the manuals is the absolute worst part of this business. And the whole time, I have to take photos of before it's built, during while it's being built, and I would have hundreds of photos, not knowing which ones I'm going to use for the manual or for whatever. And yet I would, because I did them all my photos were done on my cell phone. Now I've got an awesome cell phone today that takes amazing photos, but we're talking, 10 years ago, cell phones, that's where I was getting my photos for anything you saw online. And even today, I'm still using those same photos, but I would make sure I would take them outside in the sunlight. And I had the certain setup outside where I'd set everything up and go, okay, here it is with just one corner on it. And here it is with the corners built, because I had to think about the manual on how someone was going to build it. And so that was the hardest part. I mean, designing it on the computer, throwing it on the laser, and starting to build it's fun. But you got to stop and go. There were times where I started building stuff up and I went, oh, I didn't take photos for the manual. So now I'm cutting other parts and redoing parts of it just to get photos for the manual of half-built, kits. And so, ultimately it was, okay, when it's ready for the manual, it's ready to sell. And you get to a point where I don't have the luxury to spend too much time on this kit. I always tried to keep my scenery on these kits very basic so that they could be used, or here's the funniest thing. We used to do these, we called them starter structures, right? Where they were a 2 or 3 story building storefront. And we allowed the customer to choose what the engraving on the top cornice was, or what the engraving across the storefront was. They would actually put that online. And when we got it, we would actually custom engrave hundreds of different business names onto pieces of wood that would go with the kits. And the funniest thing was, is we also offered these kits with different brick types, whether it be old brick, whether it be clean brick, whether it be our aged American bond brick. But everybody, so I built it up as a painted, I didn't even do regular brick. I painted it an off-white, old brick, and had we had 2 different tops you could have, whether it was a square cornice top or it was a rounded one, and people put dates in it. And literally, I put one photo online of the kit painted this off-white color with 1903 in the rounded cornice at the top. And everybody who built that kit, even though they could order it with different tops, different names, different brick types, always made it just like my original one. And that was not what it was intended for. It was the starter structure. What do you need in your town? Do you need a tailor shop? Do you need a bike shop? Do you need, in a mining town, do you need someone who is, weighing and giving you value for your gold that you're bringing in? I forget what those are called. But they always just copied exactly what I produced. And I just never understood that. When you had all these options to do anything you wanted to do, and that's what they did. They always built it as I showed it in the photos.
Most people don't have much imagination, to be real honest. And that's exactly why you see the people complain when they see there's this kit for a saloon, not a saloon, but dry cleaners. Well, you could use that for what you want. No, I need a kit for a bank, or I need a kit for a tailor. Well, it's the same thing. Nope, I need a kit for that.
No, you're 100% correct. And I proved that, because they always ordered it exactly the way they saw the photo.
It goes
and then they would show me, everyone always sent me photos of what they built. And there it is.
Comes back to your point earlier. The vast majority of people can't see and imagine something in 3-dimensional space in front of their eyes when it's not there. And that's a talent that only certain people have. You're absolutely right.
Yep. And that's why I produced all my product so that the beginner modeler could actually benefit from it, learn from it, and actually produce something that they would be happy with. Wouldn't be my quality work, but at least they were. And that was always my whole focus, was to make sure that, you know, I've done so many clinics where first time model builders came in and they were actually able to finish the kit with my instruction. That was made me the most proud. I didn't care about the guy like the Dave Ravellas out there of the world and so forth, who can build anything, make anything look like anything they want. And that person is not my customer. Yeah, you can certainly be my customer and be that person, but we're not. Most people aren't that kind of a modeler. So we have to take that into account. And that's a big part of it.
Jimmy, is there a difference between model hobbies? Is there a different kind of modeler in model railroading versus the military modeler versus the fantasy modeler?
No, to be honest, they don't see each other. Like a lot of military modelers would never go to a model railroad show back in the day, right? When we actually had shows to go to. Because they always thought that that's not me. But the way they model, the way they weather, the products that they use are completely cross-platform and work. I learned a lot of techniques from the modelers that do planes and military stuff. I mean, I learned techniques with hairspray and all kinds of things that wasn't happening in model railroading, because even the model railroaders aren't buying the magazines that are showing the guys who are doing the airplane models and the military stuff. But guess what? The techniques work across platform. So what I found is that there really was no difference between modeler, just that they didn't have an open enough mind to go and see other people. They're not doing military stuff. I'm not going to go. I don't care for train stuff. So I don't, you know, I'm not going to go to that. There were very few that would cross platform. And that to me was you know, obviously, you're not learning at that point. And that's, again, where Monster Model Works came into play, is I didn't want to be just a model railroad hobby, you know, platform. I want everyone to be able to say, oh, I can buy from him. He's not a railroad guy. And that's how they think.
Yeah, it's really strange how that works out. I know I have learned tons of stuff from going on YouTube and just watching the military videos. Those guys are phenomenal modelers and doing phenomenal work and things that we don't even think about in our modeling, you know. So, you know, those are
100%.
Yeah, you're right about the cross thing.
I always
a lot of people
to learn from
don't even think about that.
Yeah, well, you know, but that goes again. Most modelers, they like my dad. Okay, I love him dearly. I think he loved building bench work and laying track more than anything else, right? Because once he had that done, it's how fast can I get my trains up and running with buildings behind it, right? A lot of people are in that mindset, but the model builders aren't. The model builders I'm focused on the detail, the paint, how it's being done. And I don't care if it takes, you know, an extra week or two to get it on the layout, because I care about that. But there's so many model railroaders, yeah, they want the building. They're going to build it. They're going to throw it together as fast as they can. They're going to stick it up behind there. But their main focus is running those trains, which is perfectly fine. But there's so much learning that we can do from all the different modeling platforms out there, and just the fun of it all. To me, it was to spend 100 hours. And I remember one time, I used to cut my own shake shingle roofing. I used to buy the sheets. I think it was from CC Crow. Eventually purchased something. It began with the B business.
Builders and Scale.
Builders and Scale. Yes, I used to purchase their cedar sheets, and I would cut out all these individual pieces. And I remember one time I said, I'm not going to glue. I'm going to use a different way to adhere it. And I spent hours laying each one down. And it looked awesome. It was so much, to me, that's therapy, right? To other people, it's like, I'm not going to sit there and lay, 3,000 pieces of shingle on this one building's roof. And I can easily remember, because I didn't use glue, I was using a different medium, trying something new, that as soon as I started putting an alcohol wash over the top to start coloring it, it was like popcorn. Bing, 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 bing. Those are shooting all over the place, and I had to start all over again because it just didn't hold, didn't stick down, and I learned the lesson from it, but I still enjoyed doing it. And that's the difference between a model builder and just, say, a model railroader who's more interested in trains. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those, but there is a difference. And that's why I don't call myself a model railroader, because I love building models and taking that extra time, painting individual bricks in HO scale. Like, why would you do that? Because I enjoy it. Has to be part of it for us to want to sit in our basements for hours at a time doing this stuff. There's got to be some joy to it, whether it is running trains and having operating sessions, or it's the actual, some people it's scenery and laying dirt. And I used to give a clinic on I built my own static grass machine, which I still have. It works better than anyone that you could ever purchase. Mine actually sucks the static grass material back up into itself. It's so powerful. And I used to teach people how to make grass tufts. The only glue I ever use is canopy glue. Period. And Mike Rose was like, I don't use really canopy glue. I know Scott used it and so forth. And why would you use it? I just want to use white glue. Well, guess what? I can move very quickly with a building. And the other thing is there's a vinyl acetate in it, so that when it actually cures after, like, the next day, it actually won't open back up again if you're putting water or washes or alcohol over the top of it. And so I said, Mike, use the canopy glue when you build them in my buildings. And he was amazed. He's like, dude, I came back the next day and I tried to break a corner piece off. And actually, it didn't break at where the glue joint was. It broke on another part of the wood because the canopy glue held it so tightly together. And there's nothing that's going to take it apart. And it's cheap, and it lasts forever. I mean, back in Massachusetts, we had canopy glue season. Because if it gets frozen, if it gets too cold, it's no good. So they would not, the hobby stores and so forth would not bring it in during the winter time. So if they ran out, you had to wait to spring, because they all knew that if it froze, it's done. The whole case is done. It won't work. And so we used to joke about canopy glue season, because everyone would get their glue in. And I used to sell it. I used to bring it in by the case and sell it. But the post office is so difficult to ship through when you're shipping, even though it's not flammable, it's a liquid. You got to get a special license, and it costs all this extra. I said, you know what, that ain't worth it. I ain't selling it no more. But it's the best glue out there. Formula 560 canopy glue. I mean, and that's what it was used for originally, was canopies on military models, because it dries so clear. Scott Mason used to put it inside. We had a technique where we would use it inside of the window openings of all the mullions of all his buildings. So when he would build buildings for people, and he's building, George's big super kits for other people who didn't want to build them. That's what one of Scott's main businesses was. He's like, dude, I've built that kit from George 100 times now. I can do it like with my eyes closed. I'm like, how could you do that? That would make me nuts. But we would put this in the windows, let it dry, and it looked like old leaded glass when it dried. It was very clear. It dries very clear. And it was amazing looking in the final product, but it took time to get it into each window opening. So if you got 9 window openings and you got 50 windows going on a building, we were actually putting glue in each one of those holes with this canopy glue, and it was amazing looking. But no one does that. No one does that. But it's amazing. It looks great when you do it. It really does. So, what else you got?
Anybody have any more questions?
Yeah, I just want to say something that one thing that was cool about your brickwork, Jimmy, is that you were the only one to ever put the rest of the brick out. Everybody put down sheets of brick. They didn't put out the cornices, the windows, all the other details that are required to build a brick building. And so that was one thing that was really always cool about your stuff.
Yeah, we started as a scratch building business, right? That's where I started. It was all brick sheets. And then as I started getting into kits and looking at cornices and looking at, the different details that are on these buildings, that's where all this came from. I said, how can a scratch builder, have a guy call me up and say, how do I get, he wants to do a custom kit. And I'm like, I'm not cutting that for you. But you can do this, this, and this. And he's like, well, how do I get all these multi-layered pilasters and sometimes, like on this McCampbell building, it's kind of something that's hard to see, but in this spot here, there's multiple overlays of 1/32 brick to give you these different layers. And so I started selling 1/32 sheets, and they're like, well, how do I use those? Well, you can cut a row of 4 bricks, then cut a row of 2 bricks, glue them on top of each other, and glue them on top of my 1A sheet. And now you've got a little custom cornice to go around the top of your building. And you're like, holy moly, now I can build anything. And it's just a matter of how you use the materials, and where your mind is at for that. And that's where I love the kit side of it, because then I can say, hey, guess what? With this McCampbell building, it's got it's got like 3 or 4 1/32 overlays on top of itself, giving all this dimension. And when people ask me, they go, wow, I can do that myself. Yeah, I just buy my 1/32 sheet, cut it into any size pieces you want, glue them up over and over on top of each other, and now you've got your decorative brick. I've done gingerbread work with it, in certain kits. We did the Durango Roundhouse where the backside had all the gingerbread, type of brick cornice on it. And it was all just because you were layering things. And to me, why would you buy my brick sheets if we couldn't also offer, and one of the next products we're going to be releasing is our lentils. We had all different sizes and shapes and different decorations of lentils for windows and doors. And without that, you can't, people would say, can I buy this material from this manufacturer? Can I use plastic and then put it over your wood brick? Well, yes, you can. But it's not going to be, you're not going to have the same texture as you paint it. So then I started putting out those products so that people could have all the same textures layered over each other versus, buying plastic from someone else, plastic lentils, from something else where it's going to stand out too much over the brick that's there. And so it just made sense to make sure you had all those extra products. That makes sense, William. And and by staring at your face all I know, and I definitely remember you from Steve. So good old Steve.
Well, listen, I hate to wrap this up because this has been so fantastic, but I know Dylan is about to be told he has to get off his computer. So without Dylan, there's nobody to run the show. So I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap this up. Jimmy,
this is good. We've gone a couple hours. So, and like I said, anyone has questions, you can reach out to me by email, Facebook, follow me there, the website. I try to answer any questions I can all the time. So
Jimmy, I can't thank you enough for this. I really do appreciate it. I know you're busy. I tried to get you before and you were too busy trying to get something done, but I really thank you so very much for taking the time and dealing with us. And it's been a very short 2 hours as far as I'm concerned.
I didn't even seem like it, but like I said, I think this Zoom stuff is great. I'm looking forward to doing the train show with you next month. And, we got to keep doing this kind of stuff. This is what keeps the hobby going.
Fantastic. Well, listen, next time we've got two guys I think you're really going to enjoy. Kevin McCumber and Phil Edholm. And they're going to discuss business and making your hobby a business, or keeping your hobby a hobby, or whichever you prefer to do. But they both are extremely experienced businessmen. They have a tremendous amount of knowledge. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And anybody out there, whether you're currently in the business of manufacturing hobby products or thinking about doing it, I think you can really benefit from hearing from them. So I hope you'll come back and hear what they have to say. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.